Hello and welcome to FPL Mate, your best mate for fantasy Premier League content for the 2023-24 season. My name is Dan and it's time for the second to last tier list video of the season. Guys, we're doing the Game Week 37 tier list video. We're going to rank some players. If you enjoy this one, make sure you drop a like. Do subscribe if you're new around here. Let's get going. So as always, we are going to be using 5 different categories to separate the 30 most popular transfers in at time of recording for Game Week 37. Who is going to make the top spots and who is going to be in the horrible avoid category. No one wants to be there, really. And we're going to start off with a man called Lewis Dunk. And Dunk, I think, is going to go in the optional category. Now, in general, recently, Brighton haven't really impressed defensively, but they put up a really good defensive performance against Aston Villa in Game Week 36, which does at least give you the impression that there is a chance of getting some defensive clean sheet returns in here. And also, Dunk, decent attacking threat as well for a centre-back as well. So, in general, I think he's an okay player to go for if you are happy to spend 5.2 million for him. Is he good value for money though? Probably not if you're looking for a cheaper pick, but definitely can do okay for you this game week. I would have a look at Webster potentially if you want to go a bit cheaper in that Brighton defence. Next up, Hojlund, going to put him straight in the avoid category. Just not looking good for him at all recently. Not really getting any chances to score, and even with a double game week, you do have to doubt his kind of chances of getting attacking returns. I would not be looking to go there personally unless there really was not any other options for me in the forward slot. He'd be pretty low on my list in terms of forwards I want to go for right now. Next up, another Manchester United player is going to be Onana. I think he possibly goes somewhere between good transfer and optional. In general, not expecting Manchester United to keep any clean sheets this game week against Arsenal and Newcastle, but save points are definitely going to happen, particularly as Man United's defence is just completely shot at the moment. There's so many missing players through injury, and therefore there's going to be a lot of shots. Onana is, in general, a good person for save points. He really, really is, and in that sense, he's probably going to outscore a lot of at least the single game week goalkeepers with just playing the games and getting those saves. I think that's going to be a huge part for him, getting those saves to actually create an okay score. So somewhere between good transfer, maybe you could consider him an optional as well. We wouldn't really be putting him any higher than that. In fact, maybe I'm being a bit generous. Maybe we'll drop him down to optional for now, but I think we may move things around as we go through this video because I don't want to put too many players in the optional category, and I'm definitely at risk of doing that right now because I'm about to put Madueke in the optional category as well. Now, going for a Chelsea differential midfielder, I think is an option this week. Madueke pretty much nailed on in that right wing position at the moment as well, in decent form as well. His underlying numbers are okay. They're nothing amazing, but if you're looking for a differential for a Chelsea team that is in form, playing against Nottingham Forest and Brighton, 2 nice fixtures in the double game week. In fact, you would say that Chelsea have one of the better double game weeks in terms of looking at those fixtures. So Madueke, could you go a little bit different in that sense? I think it's definitely an option for you, and therefore he goes in the optional category. Next up, Bruno Guimaraes. I think he is probably going to be an avoid for me. Not super keen on this pick. Yes, he has been getting some attacking returns recently, but his underlying numbers are not particularly good, and I think there's just other areas in that Newcastle team that I would prefer to spend my transfers on. I'd rather go for some slightly different Newcastle players rather than Bruno himself. So we're going to put him there. Yes, getting returns, but underlying numbers are just not reflecting that, and I don't know for how long this can continue. Can you get lucky with him? Certainly you can, but I think we use our Newcastle slots in other areas of the field because I think those Newcastle slots are going to be very valuable this game week. Edison, I think, has to go in a similar place to Onana. Maybe you put him slightly ahead because you would say that Edison does have a better chance of clean sheets at least. In fact, maybe he's a good transfer, but clean sheets are all you're going to get, and that's kind of the best case scenario with Manchester City is that, you know, even though their defence often looks quite strong, the clean sheets are often fleeting and you never really know when they're going to come. So it could be that at 5.5 million, Edison is a little bit too much money and actually maybe a waste of a Man City slot. But he's certainly one of the more reliable goalkeepers going into this game week, and a player I would look to hold on to if I had him already. I think he is a decent transfer to make as well, though he probably would not be my top Man City pick. Similar to, you know, the likes of Bruno G, wouldn't be one of my top picks for his respective team. Speaking of Bruno G and Newcastle, Dubravka is going to be another player going in the avoid category. I think I would be really fearful going into this game week with a Dubravka. Now, if you already have him in your team, then maybe you just take the risk and take a chance. Maybe a decent bench boost goalkeeper goalkeeper potentially, but Nick Pope back on the bench in game week 36, and I can see Pope actually getting some game time over the double game week. And if that's the case, we could see Dubravka only play one game. There's a chance he plays 0 games over the double game week, and that's no good at all. So Dubravka, super risky goalkeeper to have in your team at this moment. And if you don't have him already, remember guys, this is a transfer tier list. We are ranking players on whether you should transfer them in, not about if you already have them already. I would not be transferring Dubravka in right now. I think it's too risky. And next up, Garnacho. I think we need to slot him in the good transfer category, to be fair, because in terms of looking for those value picks, I think Garnacho is definitely up there. 5 million is a very, very cheap price tag. Manchester United, a team that we're not going to be naturally tripled up on right now anyway, as we don't really like the look of the Manchester United defence right now. Hojlund not really in very good form at the moment. Bruno Fernandes is really the only other guy to speak about for Manchester United outside of maybe Onana. And yeah, I think in general, Garnacho, he fills up a nice cheap slot in your team if you want to spend a lot of money in other areas of your pitch. A nice fifth midfielder, a nice bench boost midfielder as well that you can definitely consider going into the double game week. Gallagher, similar situation to Bruno. Yes, getting attacking returns recently, but the underlying numbers are just pretty poor at the moment. I just don't think it's worth the risk. His actual output is not backed up by stats, by numbers, and therefore we will be looking to put him in the avoid category. Now, his attacking numbers actually were pretty decent against West Ham, but that was a bit of an anomaly. Typically, we don't really see Gallagher with more than 0.1, 0.2 expected goal involvements per game. So that's kind of looking at one expected attacking return every 5 games, which again, yeah, it's just not very good really in general. So Gallagher, we're going to be happily putting him in the avoid category. There's just other areas to spend your Chelsea slots, I suppose. Bruno Fernandes is completely injury dependent. From what I'm aware of, the injury is not significant, and he could even feature tonight. I'm recording this on Monday afternoon. We don't know about the Man United Crystal Palace game in game week 36 yet, but if he's available, he is at least a good transfer. He could even potentially be a great transfer. You know, we're looking at taking a penalty taker. We know how important penalty takers have been this season. We're looking at the most informed, creative player in that Manchester United team, who's also taking plenty of shots as well. Maybe being freed up a little bit at the moment by kind of maybe some of the players playing around him. But I don't know if that might change with all of the injuries at Manchester United at the moment. But look, he's a good transfer if he's available, which I believe right now that he will be. But if it turns out the injury is more significant than we initially expected, then of course we would have to drop Bruno naturally down into the avoid category. But for now, this is where he's going for now. Next up, Jordan Pickford. Now, seen a lot of people kind of talk about this. Are Everton just as good as any other defence for the double game week, despite the fact they have a single game week? I mean, certainly if you had a, if you had a Pickford against Sheffield United in a single game week, we'd be talking about Pickford as one of the top picks of the game week. But unfortunately, because so many other goalkeepers have double game weeks, I think I would probably prefer to play the odds and go for a double game week goalkeeper. Because even if, Pickford does get a clean sheet, say Pickford, for example, gets a clean sheet, no save points, we're looking at a 6-pointer there potentially for him, maybe 7 including bonus, 7 if he gets a few saves. However, a player like Onana, even without clean sheets, if he only concedes 1 goal per game but gets 3 saves per game, and often he gets more than 3 saves per game, then we are actually looking at Onana matching the likes of Pickford without actually having to do very much at all in the game. So I think you play your odds. Onana definitely has a lesser chance of getting a clean sheet in each individual game, but when you include points for playing, save points over multiple games, I do prefer the double game week goalkeepers to Pickford, though there is still certainly an argument to say Pickford is decent for this game week as well. It's just a bit of a risk. So do you want to play the odds? Do you want to play the numbers? Or do you want to say, okay, Pickford against Sheffield United, this is a good opportunity. It certainly is a decent opportunity. But, in fairness to Sheffield United, they have been scoring maybe 1 goal per game recently, haven't they? So it's not a completely guaranteed thing that Everton will keep a clean sheet. So, maybe play the odds with an Onana or an Edison or another goalkeeper like that. Ben White is our next pick. He is going to go in probably the optional category, although, if we look over the course of 2 game weeks, he's actually probably a good transfer. If you're looking for a defender who's going to take you through the double, against Manchester United, away from home, but then also playing Everton, final day of the season, you would say Arsenal you know, look pretty good for a clean sheet there. The fact is, Arsenal keep clean sheets against just about anybody at the moment, and I think Ben White has a decent amount of attacking potential there as well down that right-hand side. It's not enormous, but it's certainly something to be aware of. So Arsenal defenders in general, definitely still good shouts, not just for this game week, but also for the following game week as well. There's not too much going on in the world of defenders at the moment, and Arsenal have been kind of that glimmer of hope if you are looking for clean sheets. So even against Manchester United, which is not the easiest fixture for a defender, I still think you've got a decent chance of getting something out of a single game week player like Ben White. Dalot, I think, is down in optional now. Not so keen on him. Now we know how many injuries there are in the Manchester United defence, with Maguire, the latest player, being added to that list. So really am cooling on Dalot. Dalot's attacking numbers are not particularly good either. I know we expect him to be an attacking fullback, but that just hasn't really been the case this season. Romero, I think I do prefer him to a player like Dalot, and maybe even prefer him to a player like Dunk, to be honest. The defenders in general are not great. We know Spurs are looking like conceding goals all the time, but Romero has a little bit of attacking threat from set pieces. You know, we've seen him charge up the pitch and try a couple of attempts on goal recently as well, so maybe he is just, you know, trying to become a bit more of a goal-scoring defender, which he was never historically, but maybe things have changed a little bit this season, scoring a decent amount of goals for a centre-back this year for sure. So against Burnley, that's a nice fixture this week. Then we've got Man City as the other half of the double, and then Sheffield United, final game week of the season. I think actually, as a pair of game weeks, Spurs defenders look good on paper, but in reality, we do understand that Spurs aren't always the strongest of defences, are they? Now, Cole Palmer, must buy. You guys all have him already, I imagine, by this point. But yeah, if you don't have him already, no reason not to go for him at this moment. Get him in your team, but we'll leave that one there. Chalobah, I'm going to put in the avoid category. I think this one is a little too risky for me. Yes, he's been getting a decent amount of game time more recently, but he hasn't been 100% nailed on. And I do worry, with Gusto coming back, maybe Chalobah is going to be dropped down to the bench for at least one of these two games in the double game week. So 4.3 million looks like a really good value for money for him, until you realise that actually last couple of weeks he's played a little bit at right back, and that's when Gusto is going to come back and at least get some game time. If it's up to me to make a prediction, I would say that Chalobah plays one game at right back, Gusto plays the other game at right back, and therefore Chalobah maybe only plays one game. Now, of course, Chalobah can also play at centre back, but we've also got the likes of Colwill now coming back to fitness for Chelsea as well. So we are taking a big risk going for Chalobah. If you're going for a Chelsea defensive asset, I think Petrovic is really the only player I would be confident in. Everyone else poses a little bit of a risk. Certainly Chalobah does, so not sure I would actually go there. Now, De Bruyne, interesting one, quite expensive. I do currently prefer him to Bruno Fernandes, and I think if we had unlimited Man City slots in our team, then De Bruyne would certainly be making the best 11 for game week 37 and probably game week 38 against West Ham as well. Really nice pair of fixtures for the Manchester City attacker, and we do expect De Bruyne to play every game until the Premier League is wrapped up, which, if I'm honest, I expect not to happen until game week 38. It's going to go down to the final game week of the season, and De Bruyne is going to be a crucial part of making sure City do clinch that title. So De Bruyne, really nice transfer, good transfer in fact, but the fact that there are so many other Manchester City options, I think maybe prevent him from going any higher than a good transfer. But if I'm going for a differential right now, if I want to kind of, you know, maybe move away from the template of 2 Man City attackers and 1 Man City defender, for example, then De Bruyne would definitely be one of the players at the top of my list, even though he is reasonably expensive there. Now, Branthwaite I do like. I prefer him to a Pickford. I actually prefer him to a lot of these double game week defenders, so we're going to put him in the optional category. We'll put him maybe somewhere here, next to Pickford, I suppose. With Branthwaite, I think the great advantage you have here is that we know that Sheffield United do occasionally concede goals from those set pieces, from corners, from indirect free kicks, and we'll be looking at centre-backs with good aerial presence to maybe do some damage there. And the likes of Branthwaite and Tarkowski have a good reputation now of getting opportunities from set pieces. So Branthwaite, yes, ideally you're looking for a clean sheet from him, but I wouldn't rule out attacking returns in this single game week from him either. So a pretty nice pick there. Cucurella, I think a lot of people will look to go for him right now, and I think he will probably play both games in the double game week, but I don't think it is guaranteed. I think you are taking a risk going for Cucurella. I like the fixtures for Chelsea, and I like the form of Chelsea as well. I actually do fancy Chelsea to keep at least 1 clean sheet in the double game week, and possibly even 2 against Forest and Brighton, both teams who don't score a huge amount of goals, particularly that Brighton team really struggling for goals at the moment. But, of course, with Colwill coming back into the Chelsea team, you do have to wonder, will Colwill maybe get some minutes at left back? Now, I don't think Chilwell is as much of a concern right now. I don't think Chilwell, at the moment of recording, I don't think Chilwell is good to start yet, but there is a chance of that as well, maybe in game week 38. So just be aware of Cucurella. He's an okay pick for sure. Definitely an option for you if you absolutely have to go for a Chelsea defender. A goalkeeper is not an option for you, then yeah, Cucurella definitely someone you might want to consider. Not too much on the attacking potential, but he's played pretty well there and has managed to pick up some bonus points as well in recent game weeks. Petrovic, definitely a good transfer, and probably my favourite goalkeeper for the double game week. In fact, I would put him all the way up here. I don't want to say he's a great transfer because, in general, I don't think defenders and goalkeepers can really be good transfers this game week, which is ironic considering we're all looking for goalkeepers and defenders at the moment for our bench boosts potentially. But yeah, in general, clean sheets have been difficult to come by, and yeah, I do still think that Chelsea have the best fixtures from a defensive point of view, and I think they're the most likely to get something from clean sheets. And Petrovic, I think, is just safe, nailed on. I'm not concerned at all about rotation from him. Back-to-back clean sheets now, and he's playing pretty well, making saves when is required of him as well. So yeah, I think we're going to put him in here. You know, save points, bonus points we've seen from him recently as well. Can we see Petrovic being, you know, the top scoring goalkeeper for game week 37? I think we definitely can, and I'd be happy to take him into that final game week of the season against Bournemouth as well for some potential save points. Now, Hojlund and Son is probably still a great transfer. I mean, we're talking about a nailed-on penalty taker, you know, often playing out of position as a forward. He hasn't been in the best form recently, but he did manage a goal against Liverpool, at least, I guess. So, it all counts the same. And, yeah, I think with a player like Son, he's got a fixture against Burnley in the double, and that is a favourable fixture for an attacking player. And we've got that fixture against Manchester City as well, which is a fixture that Son has always thrived in historically. It just is a game that very much suits him on the counter attack, and we know how clinical he can be if he gets in behind the defense one-on-one with the goalkeeper. So definitely a player I think could do very well this game week. Is he essential? Well, if we asked ourselves this question a month ago, we would be saying Son is an essential player for this game week, but that dip in form has dropped him out of those must-buy categories, and I think he is still very much a great transfer, but not necessarily a must-buy. Now, Foden, I think, is a difficult one because he is almost a must-buy. I am going to put him at the top of the great transfer category instead, though. I'm not sure he's quite in that must-buy category, but he is definitely a player you would very much like to have in your team. The problem is, like I say, with Man City, is there is a lot of options right now, and we want to get loads of Man City players, ideally for this double game week. That's just not going to be possible. 3 players is the limit, and therefore Foden may be considered as a player who can be, you know, dropped from your fantasy teams if you don't already have him. But I still would very much recommend him as a great transfer going into this game week. He's been a phenomenal FPL asset all season, and I expect that to continue. Kyle Walker, I'm going to put him in optional because, honestly, although I do think he probably is nailed on for the rest of the season now, because, like I say, Man City need to win games, I think there's probably some other defenders we would just about prefer to go for right now. So Walker is going to go in optional. I don't think he's worth a Man City slot, though, in all honesty. Yeah, I can't really see myself buying him. 5.4 million. There's another player in the Man City defense that is just a better option and is cheaper and is more attacking. So it doesn't make too much sense to go for Walker at the moment. So we're going to put him in there, but we'll get to the other defender when we get to him. Now, Porro. Good transfer. Yep, solid. Yeah, good fixtures for Spurs on paper, as we say. Are we expecting clean sheets? Not necessarily, but with the form of Maddison and the fact that we've seen Maddison now dropping out of the Spurs team a couple of times now, being benched, that means Porro is going to be on set pieces. Free kicks, corners, you know, these are really useful avenues for getting FPL points. I like that Burnley fixture in particular for Porro to potentially get, you know, maybe a corner assist or something like that, because they are one of the weaker teams when facing the set pieces. So I do like Pedro Porro for that. Obviously a very attacking fullback as well, so he's going to get open play, chances to get in the box, take shots, cross over to his teammates as well. So over the next 2 game weeks, I think Pedro Porro is a player well worth having, despite that price tag and despite maybe some concerns around Spurs for clean sheets. But honestly, looking at defenders, he's probably the pick of the bunch right now, other than one guy who we'll get to. And maybe this other guy as well, because Dan Burn, he's got to be up there in terms of good transfers as well. I think the fixtures for Newcastle are pretty decent for the double game week. I mean, that Brighton fixture is always going to be nice. 4.6 million probably makes Burn the best value pick defender. If you're looking for players under 5 million in the defensive positions, then it's definitely got to be Burn is going to be the #1 player for that pick. Aerial threat, aerial presence there. Newcastle vastly improving defensively despite their injuries. Their defensive numbers are significantly up from earlier in the calendar year. And there's definitely going to be some opportunities here for some potential clean sheets for Newcastle. Do not write them off yet. We've seen recently that they can actually keep things reasonably tight at the back despite their absentees in defence. Another great transfer, I think, is going to be Gordon. We like him for his home fixtures in particular, although in that away fixture in game week 36, we saw him with an assist. We saw him with a potential penalty assist there as well. Super unlucky in that regard, but hey, that is football. But yeah, I think he's just a very good player to have. 6.3 million, really, really nice value for money there. If we're looking to spend more on the likes of, Sons and Fodens and Erling Haalands in our team, maybe some Arsenal players as well, we've got to cut some corners with the budget somehow, and I think Gordon is a great budget pick, so we'll put him there. Isak, I think Isak is possibly a must-buy, and the reason is because outside of Erling Haaland, there's no other forward that stands out as the second best forward pick as much as Isak. And I imagine most of you guys are looking to play at least 2 forwards this game week because there's not enough defenders to play with a 4-man defense force, really. So you're going to have 2 forwards in your team no matter what. If you're bench boosting, well, then you are forced to have 3 forwards in your team. If you are playing a 3-4-3 formation, you're going to have 3 forwards. And after Erling Haaland, who are you going to go for? Isak is so super obvious as that player on penalties. Fantastic form, has proven that he can not only take penalties with Callum Wilson on the pitch, but also play alongside Callum Wilson in a 2-man strike force. So we've got him more nailed on than ever in the form of his entire career. Super clinical, looking really nice, and so consistent with all of the underlying numbers backing him up. He is just the perfect FPL pick at the moment. He is ticking every single box. So a must buy as far as I'm concerned, and I don't see a reason to not have him in your team. I mean, who else are you going to go for in the forward position? And before we have a look at another forward, we need to have a look at this player. We spoke about him briefly already. Gvardiol. We didn't mention him by name, of course, but if you've got a choice between Kyle Walker and Gvardiol, there is no reason why you would go for Walker. I mean, come on. Gvardiol, you would say, is just as nailed on as Walker. Neither player 100% nailed on. That's just the likes of the Man City defense for you. There's always going to be a bit of rotation, but, his attacking numbers are among the best in the entire Premier League at the moment among our defenders. So, yeah, we're looking at a super attacking defender playing essentially in midfield, really. 5.1 million, really, really good value for money there. And, playing for, one of the better defenses in the Premier League. What more can you want? There's everything you want right now. So if you are looking to go for some Man City players right now, Gvardiol has got to be very high on your list of priority buys. Which brings us to Nicholas Jackson. I think he's personally is a great transfer. I think a lot of people have changed their mind on him over the last couple of game weeks, but the signs were there. I mean, if we're all totally honest, the signs were there, and I would value Jackson really up here somewhere. Probably I would prefer to go for a Jackson than I would a Son or a Gordon because, like I say, he's in good form. He's nailed on in this Chelsea team. His underlying numbers have been fantastic all season. He's actually finishing his chances. His positioning is phenomenal. Yes, sometimes his goals are tap-ins, but this is the point in Jackson. His positioning is so great, and it doesn't matter how the goals come. They all count the same, and if he keeps finding himself in the right positions, then goals are going to come his way, which is something we've seen over the last couple of games for him. Always in those right positions, which has been something that has been consistent with him all season. Just needed to find a bit of form. And with these fixtures, I don't see a reason not to go for Jackson right now unless you have other priority transfers in your team. I do prefer Isak as a forward, but Jackson would be very high on my priority list of players to buy for game week 37, which lets us finish off with the final player, Erling Haaland. I mean, that score in game week 36. I mean, if you didn't captain him, honestly, I mean, first of all, That is a huge swing. Super unlucky for things to be that devastating, but yeah, it does show what Haaland can do, and it shows how important he is as an FPL asset, and particularly seeing the likes of Son dropping off a little bit recently, Palmer dropping off ever so slightly as well. Haaland is just so obvious for a captain pick for Game Week 37, and I just cannot imagine a universe where you wouldn't have him in your team, so just has to be a must buy. And I think those 3 players in the top category there, must buys. You have to have these players. Outside of that, we would be looking at the likes of Foden, Jackson, Son, Gordon, Gvardiol. I want to know, guys, how many of these players in the top 2 categories do you have? And if you don't have any of, or if you don't have 1 or 2 of the players in the top 2 categories, which one are you thinking about going for? I mean, for me personally, I don't have all of them. I don't have Gvardiol. I have De Bruyne instead, which I think is a pretty decent situation to be in. But certainly, if you're looking to make transfers this week, those players in the top categories would be the players I'd be looking at right now. Make sure you've got those top 3 players in the must buys, and then the players in the category after that, those are your big transfer targets. If not, we can start looking at the good transfers. Although I suspect most of you guys will be looking for defenders this game week, which as always is a very, very difficult thing to pick out right now. But there's the tier list. Let me know if you agree with the positions of the players you see on screen right now, or if you disagree with any of these players, please let me know as well. Be interesting to get your thoughts on all of these guys. And if there's any players we haven't mentioned in today's video, let me know in the comment section and we can talk about them as well. Place them in one of these categories. But thank you so much for watching today's video. If you did enjoy, make sure you do drop a like. Do subscribe if you're new around here, going into the final couple of game weeks of the season. And we will be streaming later as well. So, yeah, get those notification bells on. We'll be streaming after the Manchester United and Crystal Palace game this evening. Feel free to check out another video. We uploaded the perfect bench boost team for Game Week 37 yesterday. So check that out. And aside from that, I'll see you later on the stream, I hope. See you later, mates. Bye-bye.